People who say, "just wanted to check."
There's a phrase people use that sounds soft, careful, and almost invisible. Just wanted to check. It doesn't sound urgent. It doesn't sound demanding. It barely sounds like a request at all. Most of the time, it appears quietly, tucked into a message that feels polite and harmless. And because of that, it rarely raises any alarms. It feels like someone simply making sure everything is okay, making sure nothing was missed. But the moment you read it, you pause, because just wanted to check isn't really about checking anything. It's about reopening a conversation without saying why it stopped. Usually, just wanted to check shows up after silence. A message was sent, time passed, nothing happened. So instead of asking directly, the phrase appears, softened by just, lowered by wanted. There's no accusation, no pressure. It feels like the safest way to restart the conversation. And because it sounds gentle, it often works. A reply comes in. The conversation moves forward, at least temporarily, because the phrase isn't meant to clarify anything. It's meant to avoid making the silence awkward. The issue isn't saying "just wanted to check" once. It's when it becomes the default. Messages stall, replies slow down, and the phrase returns again and again, not to change the situation, but to keep the conversation alive. Over time, the words stop feeling considerate and start feeling expected, because "just wanted to check" becomes the signal that something was left hanging, and instead of addressing it directly, the phrase circles around it. For the person receiving it, the phrase creates quiet tension, not because it's rude, but because it highlights the gap, the unanswered message, the delayed response, the expectation that lingered. Just wanted to check doesn't accuse, but it doesn't forget either. It gently brings the silence back into focus. And that can feel uncomfortable. Not enough to confront, but enough to hesitate. Enough to feel that something should have happened already. Most people don't say "just wanted to check" to apply pressure. They say it because it feels polite. It avoids sounding impatient, it avoids sounding demanding, and it avoids direct confrontation. The phrase softens responsibility on both sides. It allows one person to follow up without clearly asking for an answer, and it allows the other to respond without explaining the delay. In modern communication, that balance feels convenient, even when it quietly creates confusion. At some point, you start recognizing the phrase instantly. You see "just wanted to check," and you already understand what's happening. Sometimes you're the one sending it, trying to sound polite instead of impatient. Other times, you're the one receiving it, realizing the message stayed unanswered longer than it should have. And that's when it becomes familiar, because the phrase isn't really about checking in. It's about avoiding the uncomfortable question of why the conversation slowed down in the first place. Once you notice that pattern, it's hard not to see it everywhere. "Just wanted to check" isn't a bad phrase. It sounds polite, careful, well-intentioned, but it's another example of how modern communication avoids directness. Words that reopen conversations without addressing why they paused in the first place. And somehow, without discussion, this became completely normal. So the question remains, who approved this?